New poll, Reform UK, Nigel, on 11%. Third party behind the Tories and Labour. This is quite exciting.
Well, it's going up. They still won't get any MPs at the general election because of our first-past-the-post system. However, they are sort of nudging towards the UKIP high, which was 15% around 2015 with the 2015 election, and they didn't get any MPs either.
And if I remember, Nigel, they had about 4 million votes for that election.
They got yes, in fact, they got 1 million votes for that election. But even so, 1 million votes, and you still can't get an MP. Yeah. I mean, obviously, smaller parties constantly say that we want to get rid of the present system. Let's have proportional representation so it's reflected in the country. However, had UKIP had proportional representation, you were probably looking at somewhere near 80-odd MPs.
Yeah.
So would you want a UKIP holding the balance of power? You've got to
well, that's
think
always
about
been one of the arguments
downsides
against that sort of voting system, that minority parties have disproportionate influence.
Well, that's the point. I mean, one of the arguments is, the third horse comes first.
Yeah.
And you can see in other countries where they do have proportional representation. Israel's a classic case. They constantly find difficulties in forming a government. They've got to do coalition all the time with a number of different parties. The one benefit of our system is, whether you like the party that wins or not, at least you have one single party in government who can get things done.
What do you think, Tonia?
I mean, again, I don't know, because proportional representation does seem fairer to me. It means that every single vote has power, whereas you feel like you're voting now. I mean, like, and what am I going to do this year? What am I going to do? Am I going to go and deface my vote? Am I going to,
Better that than to not vote.
Better that than to not vote. I was told that maybe the thing to do to really put a spanner in the works is to actually pretend that you voted but make your vote disappear. And if enough people do that, then it causes a problem. I don't know. I don't know what to do, because I don't want either of the people.
Would you not give Reform your vote?
I would probably give Reform my vote, but it would be... It's a lost vote, isn't it? In many ways, is it a vote for Labour? Labour on 43%, Tories on 27%. Is it not a vote for Labour?
Yeah.
Not voting...
Well, that's what the Tories say, of course.
That's what they say.
And of course, if Nigel Farage hadn't stood down so many Brexit Party candidates against the Tories last in 2019, Boris would not have had an 80-seat majority.
He would not have exactly that. I mean, the proportional representation, which I do think... I think something in our system needs modernising. It definitely does, but I feel that proportional representation will just bring in some real left-field madness that we don't want in our government.
Do you think...
It clutters up. It will clutter up Parliament for years.
Yes, it
will
will.
get resisted in the House of Lords.
Yeah. Tonia's right. It's a more democratic system. Our system is actually not terribly democratic on the basis that only about 200,000 votes at a general election really count. So if you're in, for instance, I'm in a heavily Tory area...
You must love that.
I'm the only socialist in about 20 miles. So my vote there, it makes no difference at all to the result. Now, I'm not saying it's a wasted vote. I think you should always go and vote. If you don't want to vote for a particular party, write a nice, rude message to your candidates. They will see them, because they have to look at all those things. But at least turn up. Don't just sit at home and think it's not worth doing.
But if Reform's plan is more of a 10-year project, Tonia, then I think they're realistic about their chances in this next election. But then surely a vote for them helps their longer-term plan.
Well, to be honest with you, Ben Habib and Richard Tice speak complete sense to me.
Yeah.
They speak complete sense to me, and I feel like they're speaking to people like me, working public, commonsensical. None of this kind of rhetoric that we get from someone like Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, what does he say? All I hear is blah, 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 blah. I can't hear what he's saying. Sunak, again, was not voted by the Conservative voting public. So he's in without a job. The two that I feel that do make a difference are Richard and Ben. So, yes, I mean, they will get my vote, but I just wish it would mean more.
Yeah.
But if ever they were to make a breakthrough, it is to tap into the enormous popularity of Nigel Farage, which will never be bigger I would argue, than it is at the moment,
No, I think that's
particularly
right.
after his extraordinary performance in the jungle, and even I was voting, and I've never voted in that silly programme before.
Exactly.
And yet we still don't know what he's going to do. He's not showing...
He's keeping it very close to his chest.
But
and letting your
this is the
speculation run.
time, isn't it?
Pardon?
This is the best time for reform.
Yeah, well,
If Nigel
absolutely.
is
No,
on
I think
board.
that if Nigel was to actually lead it, we'd see a completely different area. And I think that he feels that even at UKIP's height, he came second in the seat he contested. I went down there to see his campaign. I thought he was a shoo-in, but people wanted to shake his hand but not actually vote for him. And I think he's a bit bruised about, does he want to stand for an eighth time to be an MP and then be defeated again?
I think it's changed now because when you're on a reality show like that, people get to see your personality and you kind of get to see that he was so reasonable and moderate, never lost his temper. You know, all the others that we thought were going to be stars of the show actually weren't, were they? The people like Fred and...
That awful... what was her name?
Influencer.
Yeah, the influencer.
Nella Rose.
Nella Rose, you know, she thought she was going to be the star, but she didn't. Her character came through and it wasn't that nice. And so, you know, he shone through that. So I think this is... If he's going to do it, it's got to be now. Come on, Nigel.